In this last video, we're ready to take our chain code that we've pushed back to the GitHub repository and then pull down into the blockchain network, deploy it within the network, and interact with it a little bit. So to do that, we're going to use the REST interface that's available. We'll use the Swagger API is available through the dashboard. We'll go back to our blockchain Star network, launch the dashboard, and the Swagger API is available here. Before we can invoke anything with the Swagger API, we need to first enroll securely this workstation, so we're going to use the registrar endpoint. I'm going to copy a set of credentials here. Let's use this first one. I'm going to put this over into a sticky note. You can put this in a notepad or text file or something else too, whatever you prefer. Okay, so now I've got my credentials handy. I'm going to go down to first connect. I'm going to use this method here off the registrar. I'm going to post. And I just provide my enroll ID. That's this first item. And then secret. Click on try it out. And I should get response code 200 and message login successful. And now I'm ready to move on and deploy my chain code now that I've authenticated. I'm going to skip down here a little ways. Now to deploy the chain code to the blockchain network, I'm going to use this bit here of code. And we'll talk a little bit about what it does in a moment. I'm going to go back to my network. And the API endpoint that I want to use here is under chain code. And this is going to be the deploy spec. Expand this out and make it a little bigger. So there's my JSON to deploy some chain code. Now the path that I'm providing is where to go to find it. Now in this case I'm going to set this to be the repository that I was working in. And also, since I pushed into the start folder, I'm going to change this finish to start. Okay. And this is going to then have the blockchain network go out and retrieve the chain code from my GitHub repository and where I was doing my edits. Last thing is I need to put in a secure context, specify just the user item here. So now when it sets up the chain code or initializes it, we are going to run a function. We're going to run the init function, and we're going to specify the argument hi there. And if you remember that init function that we added to the chain code, it's going to assign this argument hi there to the hello world key in the state. So that's all the information you need to provide. Let's go down and invoke. Sometimes there's a little delay in response. When you get the response back, you're looking to see a response code of 200 for success. And then here in the response body, you're going to get this big long string. And copy this string because this is your chain code ID. Paste that up here into the sticky note as well. Okay, so now let's go back. And I'm going to go all the way back over here to my network. You can see now in the network it's showing a single piece of chain code that's now been deployed, and it shows that it's up and running on 4 peers. So now that our chain code is there, let's do some things with it. So our first step we've got here in the instructions is just to query it to find out what is there that variable now. So we should be able to read off what we said before. So let's go back to the Swagger API. And again, I'm going to use the chain code endpoint. And we can also, another option you can have is you can just copy this. Now we're going to provide a function. Function name should be read. And here we're going to provide the key we want to read, so we'll enter hello world. And lastly, we need to provide the security context. And I'm copying. And if you want to double check, just make sure the other, always good to double check. I almost forgot the chain code ID. We want our chain code ID. So now we're ready to run the query. We're specifying chain code ID. We're specifying what function to run as part of the query method and what we're going to look into. They also show a fully worked example except for the chain code. So this matches. Click on try it out. And we get a response back. And their message is, hi there. That's what we set when we deployed the chain code to the network. We initialized hello world with hi there. And now in our next step, we're going to use the invoke method. And now we're going to use the invoke method to change the value in the hello world key to now be go away. I'll clear out what's here in the query spec. Click the model for the invoke method. First things first, let's get our chain code ID in first. And then we're going to now call the write function. And what we're going to send to the write function is the key name. And what we want to assign to it. And lastly, we need to set up our user security context. Okay, and we'll try it out. And now we see the method is invoke, and we see a message response code of 200. Every reason to believe that this worked, but let's double check. To check what has been written out to the blockchain after we've run this command, let's again do a query. Remove what's in the invoke. Copy over the query model. Take that since it's selected. Let's get the chain code ID. And then we're going to again read. And what we're going to read is hello world. Try it out. Method query. And now it says go away. So we know that our change has been applied to the hello world key in the state of the blockchain. Now, as a little bonus, let's go take a look over here on the network. Now we'll see a block height of 3 corresponding to the events that we've done to the chain. And over here on this tab, you can see a graphical representation of the blocks. We'll see here we have one deployment in the first block, and when we did that, we got high there. And then the second item shown here in invocation. This is where we use the right method to change hello world to the value of go away. And you don't see a block here for the queries because those aren't actually transactions that are registered against the blockchain. Those are just reads of the blockchain. So I hope this has been useful and illustrative way to see how to get through the entire Building Your Chain Code Lab, and hope you have a great time using chain code on Bluemix.